Welcome, everybody, to the Age Hackers podcast powered by Gladden Longevity, where our intent is to teach you how to live young for a lifetime. We're empowered by three questions. How good can we be? A global question. How do we make 100 a new 30? And how do we actually crack the Hayflick limit? How do we live well beyond 120? I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and Steve is off today, but I just had a really interesting conversation with Udo Erasmus, spelled Udo-Erasmus, Udo Erasmus. Udo is a fascinating individual with extensive education in biochemistry, genetics, biology, nutrition. He has a master's degree in psychology, basically went through and solved some of his own health issues. But in this conversation, we focus primarily on his psychological, psycho-spiritual journey to enlightenment, really, and living in an enlightened state. It's a really fascinating conversation. Having been born in the middle of World War II, different things that he went through, the path, how psychedelics were involved, how other things were involved for him. I think you're going to find this a really fascinating conversation. I resonated with him on a really, really deep level, and I think we both really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Age Hackers podcast powered by Gladden Longevity. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and my co-host today, Steve Ryder, is playing hooky someplace. I'm not sure what he's up to, but he's probably on a mountain someplace hiking. Maybe he's got a fishing pole in there too. I'm not sure. But so we'll take this by ourselves today. But I'm joined today by Udo Erasmus, who I just met a few minutes ago. But I'm really, really intrigued to have this conversation with you, Udo. And so welcome to the show.
Oh, glad to be on it.
Yeah, good. Great to have you. So I'd like to start off a little bit with, your background. So you grew up with some stressors in your life. The first being that, you were a child during a war. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my parents came from Latvia and Estonia, German-Swedish background. And in 1938, Hitler and Stalin made a non-aggression pact. And as part of that pact, they broke it later, of course, but
sure.
As part of that pact, Latvia went to the Soviet Union. And part of Poland went to Germany. But there was nobody from Latvia or Poland at the meeting. So they just took it because they were big and they could. Right. And my parents loved the Russians and hated communism because communists took everything away from everybody, made everything state-owned. And that was a disaster. He owned a farm. So he left Latvia and ended up being given a farm in Poland. And the Polish farmer worked for him on his own farm. You can imagine there was a little tension there. So they've sorted out. They said, look, we're living in crazy times. Let's run the farm the way this farm needs to be run. And we'll sort it out when all this stuff settles down. I was born on that stolen farm, so to speak.
Okay.
And we were refugees when I was 2.5. We were on horse-drawn hay wagons, mothers with young children on dirt roads, trying to get out of Poland, chased by the communists in tanks and trucks.
Okay.
And there were dead horses and dead people in the ditches because the good guys, the Allies, were using us refugees as target practice, shooting at us from planes.
Oh, wow.
And it was pretty intense. And so my mother she had 6 kids with her, 6 years and younger. She decided to go through the fields in winter because it was safer than to stay on the roads. So she had to leave 4 kids behind, and she dropped us off at a farmer's, and he took us to Berlin. But the relatives in Berlin were already gone because everybody was fleeing. Right. And I ended up in an orphanage for some time, and eventually her sister caught up with my mother, and she then came back and picked us out of wherever we ended up.
So you ended up in an orphanage in Berlin, Germany?
Yeah.
Right. So World War II has to be going on while this is happening, right?
This is 45. This is at the end of the war.
End of the war. So where were you actually during all the war? You were in Germany? Or
no,
you were
in the part of Poland that had been given
to Poland.
Yeah, because I was born on that farm.
Right.
Yeah. So
right. I didn't know how long you lived on that farm. So what year were you born?
42.
42. Okay. So you're born in 42. So you kind of had your first few years on that farm. And what was life like on that farm? I guess they weren't
I don't
shelling
remember
anything.
it, but it was reasonable, although you would hear the war noises.
Mm-hmm.
But being on the farm, not in the city, not where the armies are marching, not. So it was given that on the farm, there's a certain pace to life on a farm,
Sure.
even in war. So that part wasn't so bad. The flight was horrendous, and I just remember not feeling safe and not knowing what I could count on. And I remember being really shy as a kid, like always like this, with your arms crossed over your chest. I lived in books because books were safe. You could read about a war, but there's no real bullets flying, right? So I got into books, and I spent a lot of time by myself because, and I felt like I didn't have a lot of support on the outside. So two things can happen when you don't have support on the outside. One is you die, and the other one is you find support inside.
That's right.
And I was lucky enough to find support inside. And in a way that the whole war was a gift to me, looking back. Wasn't at the time, didn't feel like it at the time, but looking back, because it rubbed my nose really early in what happens when we don't cultivate peace and harmony and cooperation when we can, because then we're always going to drift downhill, and downhill always ends up in conflict and war. And so I got my nose rubbed in that. So I've lived my life trying to figure out how to make life better in as many ways as possible for as many people as possible.
Beautiful. No, that's quite beautiful. I just want to revisit this point. So you went to an orphanage in 1945. In Germany. This was after the war had ended in 45?
Yeah. Well, just sort of during the war ends, that's like a date that the army puts on it. But what's going on in the country, people are fleeing, people are leaving, and it's, that goes on. That's a protracted time that takes place.
Sure.
Because everything's unsettled, right?
Right.
And so
So how long were you in the orphanage? You went into the orphanage when you were then 3 years old or
2.5, yeah.
2.5. Okay, 2.5. And then how old were you when you came out of the orphanage?
I wasn't there probably for more than 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So I don't know exactly how long that was, but
okay. So your mom circled back and
my mom's sister. Yeah, and then reunited us with the family. But you can imagine for a 2-year-old, all of a sudden your mother's missing.
Oh yeah,
and you're in a strange place where you don't know anybody. That probably was not my most pleasant experience. But I don't have a real memory of it, other than just that feeling of not feeling safe.
Yeah, it gets imprinted though, right? It gets imprinted into the nervous system. So you have a memory of it, whether you can cognitively recall it or not.
Oh yeah, and I would say there's a certain amount of anxiety because I know when I don't pay attention, I'll start going like this. Is totally anxiety driven, and usually based on a fantasy of something not working out. Still there. Yep. I mean, I can stay out of it, but I have to be conscious. In a way, that's also a nice thing because it keeps reminding me to be present.
Where did you go? Where did you and your mom go and your other siblings go once you were all reunited?
We lived outside of Düsseldorf in Germany till I was 10. Okay. And my father, he wanted to get the hell out of Europe because they had gone through the First World War.
And the Second World War.
No, it's not even that. It's worse. First World War followed by the Bolshevik Revolution, followed by the Depression, followed by the Second World War.
Second World War.
That's right.
When was he born? When was he born?
He was born 1907.
They talk about that generation.
1910. So
1910. Yeah. They talk about the generation born in like the 1890s. The late 1890s, early part of the 20th century there, 1905, 1902, whatever, that those people had such a rough go of it, depending on where they were, right? World War I, there you go, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Great Depression, World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a hard road to hoe. That's really, really tough.
Oh, yeah.
And how did your dad was done with Europe. And so you moved to where?
So we went to Canada. We had people that we knew from Latvia who sponsored us to come to Canada. And so my father liked the North Country because in Latvia there's lots of birches and alders and fir trees, and so he liked the north of Canada, not just Canada as a northern country, but north in Canada. So he was up.
So where'd you end up?
Well, first in the Okanagan, which is about 250 miles east of Vancouver. And then he went north about 500 miles to a place called Smithers. It was actually a little town called Doughty, which was a whistle stop on the train, on the CN train. And
so you're really up there.
Yeah. He bought 112 acres for $960. And we cleared 40 acres by hand and by horse. And we lived in a house without electricity, no running water, and outhouse including at minus 40 below.
Okay. Well, that's always a wake-up call. 40 below is always a wake-up call.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's really intriguing. So you grew up, 700 miles north of Vancouver. That's a ballpark. Let's say that's way up there.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful country. It's beautiful country.
If you love nature, it's a great place to be. And he loved nature. My parents, he didn't like big business. He didn't like big religion. He didn't like big government. He didn't like any of those things. Nature for him was the place where you found rest. And there's a pace to nature that isn't as crazy as the pace of the mind.
Right.
And so he liked that.
So tell me about your journey towards safety then, after the start that you had. Well, you had another episode that popped up, actually. That
was much later.
Yeah.
My journey towards safety included spending a lot of time by myself because I was comfortable with myself. Yeah. Not so much. I was not that socially adept for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was very interested. When I was 6 years old, when we were in Germany, I listened to adults argue. And it always made me uneasy because they were so intense. And this thought occurred to me: there must be a way that people can live in harmony. And then a little cocky voice came up and said, I'm going to find out how. Nice. And that was been my driver all my life, actually. So I ended up going into science to understand how things work. Because when you understand how things work, you get a certain amount of predictability, and that gives you a certain amount of safety.
Yeah, sense of safety. Yeah.
Then I got into biosciences because I wanted to understand how creatures work. Then I got into psychology because I wanted to know how thinking works. Then I went into medicine for a year because I wanted to know what health is, but I realized we're only going to learn about disease there. And I even had talked to the dean. I said, what is health? He said, we don't know. We're working on it. But they're not even working on it because they always keep looking at disease. If you want to know what health is, you need to look at health. And so I went back into biochemistry and genetics because I realized in biology, I learned more about health than I'm ever going to learn in medicine. And I ended up in that. And then there was still something missing. So there was a restlessness. I felt it in my chest from the time I was 17 till the time I was 30. Every day, couldn't shake it, and I didn't know what it was. And then I played around with psychedelics a bit. That was very helpful because it sort of blew the door open on my very restricted war personality and said, wow, there's 1,000 ways I could live. So then I had to figure out which one of the 1,000 ways I wanted to live. So that was helpful.
Let me ask you, yeah, that is helpful. Let me ask you about that a little bit. So, so you go through these different disciplines, let's call it, kind of looking for answers, and also, I assume, on some level, looking for a fit. Right? Where do I fit? What fits with me? I'll absorb this information because it's useful, but where am I finding my fit? Right? Where do I fit in?
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where you're introduced to psychedelics somewhere along the line. Yeah. And then which psychedelics were you utilizing? What was the context in which you were introduced to them?
Well, I was in science, and the people in the arts faculties, they were smoking marijuana and they were experimenting with different things. And I asked somebody, what is it like? What is LSD like? And he just looked at me. He said, if you haven't tried it, I can't explain it to you. And if you have tried it, I don't need to explain it to you.
Okay.
And in hindsight, that was really good advice because it's really clean. You can't explain it. It is because it's a personal experience, and it's different from the usual kinds of interactive experiences we have in the world.
So did you go into that? You had this restlessness in your chest that you were describing.
Yeah.
As you look back on it now, can you articulate what that restlessness consisted of, or what it was about?
I 100% know it.
What was it?
The restlessness, it has a lot of names. Sometimes we call it blues. Sometimes we call it loneliness. Sometimes we call it sorrow or grief or sadness, but or loss.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. And what it is, it is the result of a normal, natural, necessary process for every human being when they come out of the womb, where where there's nothing to do and nowhere to go, and everything's taken care of, and it's pretty safe. And we're in deep meditation, if you want to call it that, because there's no place to go. So our focus is inside, at rest, in its source, in life, and behind that in awareness. So we're there for 9 months because we had no words. We didn't have to go pee. There was nothing calling us out. And then we got pushed into the world. Now we had to get to know the world, because now we needed to understand, is it friend? Is it foe? Is it irrelevant? Whenever something changes, our senses are attracted to it, or our focus is attracted to it through our senses. Then we have to make an assessment, run, embrace, or ignore. Then we respond to it. And every time something changes, we're drawn out to it again. And then we live our whole life like that, and that happens so many times. And then within so what happens is we started present inside with our focus of awareness and absent outside. And then through this process, we end up absent outside in our awareness, in our focus of awareness, and absent inside. So present outside, absent inside. And that's where heartache begins. Now, then we try to find it because we don't know that we have to go back inside, because nobody tells us that. So then we try to find it in the world. And we don't find it because everything ends, because everything changes, right? And so the girlfriend dumps me. So that's the trigger for my heartache. But the trigger is not the cause of the heartache. The cause of the heartache is my disconnection from myself. And the heartache is the call to come home. Just like thirst is the call to drink, and hunger is the call to eat. Heartache is the call to come home to the inherent wholeness in our nature. Yeah. And when we do, and then we don't like that feeling because it's uncomfortable, it's uneasy, it's like painful sometimes. So we distract ourselves or ignore it or try to explain it away or blame it on somebody. What we actually need to do is we need to sit with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to kill us. It's calling us home. It pulls us out of our head, makes us simple, puts us into feeling. And a hair's breadth behind the feeling, less than a hair's breadth behind that feeling, is our reconnection to our wholeness.
Yeah, that's right. I call this the hero's journey.
It is
really.
It is, one way. Yeah, it's also the journey from paradise to paradise lost to paradise regained.
Yeah,
but it's also the hero's journey. Yeah, the hero feels uneasy. He goes looking for a thing. What he always finds, he has to fight his dragons, right? And what he always finds is something that has to do with love, and that's the gift he brings back to his community.
Yeah, and it's inside of him or her.
It's an inside transformation that takes place.
Right. That's right. Yeah, it's the hero's journey to reclaim what I call it, the hero's journey to reclaim our birthright. To live as our unencumbered selves, where we're no longer living in reaction to all those traumas that happened to us. Right? Exactly. Because we go back and we actually even transcend what we had when we were in the womb, let's say, or when we were completely on the inside focused. There's an ability with our development and brain development to heal the old and then transcend it. And then with that, it creates a new realm of reality, if you will.
So the way I put it is, I'm not transcending, I'm reconnecting. So that means I leave the outside and keep the inside. But I now go into the world with that reconnection, but with the ability to articulate it.
Okay, well, let me give you a little different take on that.
Yeah.
So in the transcendence, when you transcend the outside world, you actually welcome it in, because now you can move in it freely. You're no longer encumbered by it. You have the ability to work there, move there, create there, love there, nurture there, and yet you're not impacted by it in the way that you were before. So now the world external to you becomes a playground too. It becomes, and so when you're able to transcend it, right? And so that's kind of the unencumbered element of it.
Completely agree with you. That's exactly, because from my experience, that's how it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This is my experience as well.
Yeah.
So what I love about this is so many people have had these parallel experiences, throughout history, throughout the ages, throughout different wisdom traditions, or whatever. You hear this story over and over and over again, and it's a very common human story. What I'm interested in is, what did the LSD experience do for you in this process? Did it kind of jumpstart some insights or change your perspective?
Yeah, well, it's not the whole story. Okay, but so what happened is I was with two friends. Mm-hmm. I took it on a sugar cube. It was Sandoz LSD. It came out of a neurological research lab. So I got the real stuff. There was no strychnine in it or anything, right? Okay. And 60 micrograms, which is a pretty small dose.
Okay.
And I was lying on the floor, laughing with tears running down my cheeks, listening to Mozart. And I was laughing in tune with Mozart. Nice. I mean, it was really quite funny. And but the insight, the biggest insight that came from that is I realized, oh my God, all this stuff that I've been looking for in the world so seriously is all within me already.
That's right.
That was the door blow opener. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. And then they put me in touch with something that I hadn't been in touch with for a very, 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 very long time. Of course, then it goes away. Then the experience ends. Then you're still left with, I was left with the insight.
That's right.
What I'm looking for is inside of me. So, but then the story.
You're left with the insight, but then you're also left with, how do I actually access that? How do I integrate it? How do I make it my own? How do I build on top of it? Right.
Yeah. So I wasn't at that point yet. So then I did a number of different experiences, and they were all pretty similar. They all had that element of what you're looking for is inside of you. Then I got into, but that still didn't put me there on a daily basis. And so I started looking, where else can I find what I was looking for? Being from a Christian culture, I went to the Bible. I got a red letter edition. Okay. Everything Jesus says is in red ink. Everything else is in black ink. And I wanted to know what the master talked about, because they're still talking about him 2,000 years later. Nobody remembers my grandfather. So I started putting little things in what he said to the test, and had some really magical experiences, like a whole raft of them, little ones. And a year later, there was this group of people who came up the coast to Vancouver from California. They called themselves the Jesus People's Army.
Okay.
That should have been...
What year was this?
1970.
Okay.
So by now I'm 28.
Yep.
Right.
Got it.
So that should have been a warning to me, because army was not exactly a happy word for me. Right.
Right.
But I missed the cue. I thought in my head, okay, well, these guys, they're probably all looking for what I'm looking for, trying to understand. The master seems like a pretty good model to me. And my question was, what did he feel that made him live like he did, talk like he did, do what he did? I didn't want to be the master. I didn't want a religion after me. I just wanted to know what was his experience. Because because poetry comes out of experience. Yes. So there must have been something that he felt that was pretty outstanding. So So these guys came up. I figured we're all on the same track. We're trying to figure that out. And we'll all share our stories because we've all learned something on our journey.
Right.
And we'll share the stories and we'll all leave this meeting enriched. That's what I thought. So they had a coffee house. It didn't
work out that way.
They had a coffee house, invited people. I said, okay, I'll go to the coffee house. Went to the coffee house, sat down at a table. And the moment I sat down, this guy swooped into the chair next to me at the same table. That should have been a warning too, but I missed that cue too. So he sat down and I looked him in the eyes. I didn't introduce myself. I said to him, it must be possible to see God and live. And I thought that would be a good beginning for a deep conversation. Well, he jumped out of the chair like a bullet went off. He jumped out of the chair and his arms were flailing wildly over his head, and he screamed at me, "You're from the devil! You're from the Antichrist! Get out!" So I went slinking out of there, and I'm standing on the sidewalk, and I'm thinking, well, let's see. I haven't seen God, so maybe I shouldn't be asking a question like that. And I got really confused and really desperate and really sincere because I really, really, really wanted to know. And again, this was an awful experience when it happened. Yeah. But I have to thank this guy because here's what happened. I decided to clear my head. And I used to go to nature to clear my head, just like my dad used to, right? Yeah. So I went to the west coast of Vancouver Island. There's a beach there with logs on the beach and all of that. There was nobody there. It was in summer. And somebody had draped plastic over some logs and made a little dwelling. And I said, okay, here's my hotel for the weekend.
Okay.
And you couldn't stand up in it, so I had to crawl in, and I could sit in it, but I couldn't stand in it. And I crawled in, I lay down, went to sleep. And in the middle of the night,
somebody else crawled in?
I woke bolt upright from dead asleep, and there was this being made of light.
Okay.
And I don't believe in stuff like that. But there it was. It was a being. Yeah. I couldn't tell if it was male or female. I couldn't tell if it was old or young. But a human being made of light, no words, no labels, but embodied a message. And I could put words to that message that he embodied, or that being embodied. It's not a he. And the words are, I am come not to judge, but to love.
There you go.
I am come not to judge, but to love. Now, my question is, do you know a more succinct way to express the essence of the teaching of the master?
No.
I can't.
I don't know a more succinct way. No.
I am come not to judge, but to love. And what I realized later is like, who was that? Was that Christ? Was that my soul? Was that spirit? Because what are all those things? Sure. You don't know until you know, right? And it turns out they're all the same.
That's right. They're all the same.
Because what is Christ is life, and life in every human being could be called Christ, although the common word is life. And that life is solar energy, a fraction of solar energy, filtered through space, filtered through Earth's atmosphere, stored in bonds between atoms and plants. Then we eat those plants, and the bonds are broken in our cells. That energy is released, and now we call that energy life. We are actually solar energy gadgets. Every plant, every animal, every microbe, and every human being is a solar energy gadget. So now we call it life, and the message of life to the body, I am come not to judge, but to love. Same message, right? And if you go subjective on it, where you do a stillness practice and you bring your focus into that energy inside the space your body occupies, then you're in the realm of the master. That's what all of the masters talked about. And the difference between the masters and us was not that we were different, but that they took it seriously. They took it seriously. They did their stillness practice, and they discovered the nature of human nature within their own space, and then spoke from that space to that space and other people.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so 8 billion people have the master living inside of them, running their show. Life, weighs nothing but runs everything, is omnipresent in you, omnipotent in you, and omniscient in you. Knows everything about it, runs the show, and is your individual essence, is that energy.
That's right.
And that's like...
This is what it means. It's very cool, because this is what it means to be made in God's image, right? Is to
I heard the words, but it isn't real until you experience it. So what happened when this came later, this understanding developed later, but when that being was there, I am come not to judge but to love, all of my confusion and my desperation evaporated. I have never had a question about what was the essential message of the master. Okay. And frankly, Buddha and Krishna and other masters had the same message. They said it in different ways because they were in different cultures at different times. Yeah. But that is the great master's message. I am come not to judge, but to love. And you, in your individual essence, are also unconditional love. And if you can bring your focus there, you can actually help without always trying to get something back.
That's right.
Because you're now taking right.
This episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast is brought to you by H2 Molecular Hydrogen in the Gladden Longevity store.
Yeah, Steve, you've heard us talk about this numerous times on the podcast in terms of the benefits of H2 and hydrogen water. We love it. It's really the best way to balance your entire redox system. So it really protects you from free radical damage. I take it every time I get on a flight to protect me from radiation damage when I'm flying. And I use it to rejuvenate my brain in the afternoon. There's really two kinds of exercise. There's physical exercise, and taking H2 before or after that works great. But also there's mental exercise. And I find that the H2 will bring your brain back when you're tired in the afternoon. So I think it's like the perfect thing for longevity and for performance, quite honestly.
And I talked to you about this, that I found dropping 1 or 2 tablets in a glass of water right before bed. I've seen an overall bump in my deep sleep when I do so.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So if you click on the store tab when you visit GladdenLongevityShop.com and use the promo code podcast10, you'll get 10% off your order. And this code isn't only good for our H2 product, but it's also good for all the supplements we carry. So podcast10 at the GladdenLongevityShop.com.
Yeah, one of the other things that I use it for routinely is when I'm about to go on a mountain bike ride. And I will say this, that if I go on a long mountain bike ride, I will take one prior, I'll take one during, and I'll take one after. And some of the Ironmen that we've worked with have said that when they're doing an Ironman, they'll take it 3 or 4 times throughout the race. And their comment is that it's like taking out the old battery and putting in a new one. It really rejuvenates your body's ability to perform when you're doing more extended athletic activity. So think about that too. If you want to go do a longer hike or whatever else, take it with you.
So GladdenLongevityShop.com, enter podcast 10 for 10% off your order.
H2 molecular hydrogen. It's low-hanging fruit on your quest to make 100 the new 30. It also points out something that I've come to understand about what we'll call an enlightenment process. What you're describing here is a process of enlightenment. We could say,
getting lit up from within.
Yeah, being lit up from within, right? Yeah. A new understanding, a new way of being.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that you had done a lot of preparatory work to get ready for that. But when it happens, right? You've been searching, you've been, asking questions. Communicating with people, taking particular psychedelics, et cetera. You've been working on this, right? Sort of preparing the soil, if you will, for the farm analogy. But when I'll use the word transcendence, the enlightenment, whatever happened, it's a quantum event. It's like an atom moving from one energy into another higher energy shell. It happens instantaneously. There's nothing gradual about it.
Yep.
And so, just for the audience listening to this, if you're looking at your own pathway to finding peace, finding your own enlightenment, if you will, we do a lot of work to kind of prepare the the soil, understanding our psychology, understanding our history, understanding how we got here, the things that influence us, what we're living in reaction to, what our blind spots are. Many, many things go into this understanding. But ultimately, it's going to come down to not that being enough to get you there. It only sets the stage for a moment of enlightenment when you will go there instantaneously.
Yeah.
Right. This is how I experience it.
Yeah. I think that last step is a jump.
It is a jump.
And you may not even know how to take the jump.
No, you don't know how to make the jump. It happens.
Because
I've
it's
had the
not
same experience.
Yeah, because it's and then so let me finish the story. It just completely, I've never had a doubt about what the message was since that day.
Yep.
I also realized that that's the standard that I need to live by. I am come not to judge, but to love. And of course, if you don't set a higher standard, when you set a higher standard, you're doomed to fail. But every time you fail, you learn something. So never give up on the standard. Just end up failing your way to success. And the more you hold the standard, and the more you pay attention to what you're doing and how you're carrying out to that standard, the more you learn how to actually live by that standard. And I'm still a work in progress, but it's an incredibly good journey. Now, then something else happened. It became a memory. And I was like, damn it. I want to live in that experience on a moment-to-moment basis.
Right. I don't want it to be a memory. Yeah.
And that took me to by that time I'm 30. And that took me by some incredible coincidences to a 14-year-old boy who said, the peace you search for in the world is within you. I can reveal you that peace.
Okay.
And I then learned a method for bringing my awareness. And it's not complicated. It's like a method to bring the focus back inside.
Yeah. Why don't you share that with us, if you don't mind? What is the method that you learned?
The message is always make a safe place where you're not going to be distracted. And then see how still you can become, and see how deeply you can go into that stillness, and see how long you can hang out there. And while you're in that stillness, what is there? What do you observe in the space your body occupies? You can see light there. You can hear sound there. You can feel love there. Sort of like light in your darkness, sound in your silence, love in your heartache. You can even taste it. You basically you're using your senses now to monitor the energy inside of your body. Because your senses monitor energy on the outside as well as the inside. We don't monitor things, we monitor energies with our senses.
100%. Yeah, we talk about 5 senses, but really the 6th one I always describe as energy. We're reading everybody's energy. They're reading ours as well, right? So
but I'm talking about, color, pattern, movement. Yes. That's all energy. Sound, energy, silence, energy. Everything on the outside and everything on the inside, because the energy aspect is where the power is where the love is. Unconditionally empowering love is your life.
That's right.
Your life is energy.
I so love that you're talking about this in terms of energy, because this is also my experience of it. We're connecting to an energetic field, a field of all possibilities, if you will. And it is at an energetic level. You don't think your way into it. You actually quiet your frontal lobe so that you can actually
surrender your way into it. You let go into it.
That's right. You let go into it. And you can come back and analyze it or talk about it as articulated about it now as we are, but that's not how you get to it.
Because everything that we process in our heads is stuff that we didn't have in our mother's womb. We're going back to the place we were in before we had learned all those skills.
Yeah.
You don't need a skill for that. You need to surrender to. You need to let go of what's outside. So let go of the world, let go of your thought, let go of your body.
Yeah.
And then what's left, let go of the energy. And then you eventually get into awareness, undifferentiated awareness. And you can't let go of undifferentiated awareness because there's nowhere else to go.
Because that's
the foundation.
That's right. And what comes out of that what comes out of that, quite honestly, is this deep, profound sense of rest and deep, profound sense of peace.
Yeah.
Which
peace,
is kind of where you started with all this.
Peace is, and peace is the core of it.
Right.
And then around it is the unconditional, empowering flow of love.
That's right.
Of the energy.
100%. And the lack
and then
of
around
judgment.
that, it shines into the world as inspired purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And the lack of judgment. I think what's really cool is in this space, there's only compassion.
Right.
There's love and compassion, right? But there is no judgment. There's love and compassion.
And you want to
sit,
yourself,
and for everybody else.
Yep. And you want to sit in the heartache, just accept it and feel it, no judgment.
Yeah.
Don't make it mean anything. Don't try and explain it. Don't think about it. Just feel it. Just feel it. Be in it. And actually, the heartache is the greatest gift we've been given other than being alive. Because if it wasn't for that call to come home, we would never find our way home.
Yeah. If you didn't feel uncomfortable, you wouldn't know that you needed to move, right? So to speak, or take action or figure something out or make a shift or whatever. Yeah. What's interesting is how we normalize the pain, so to speak, or we're overwhelmed by it in the sense that we can't figure it out. And then we go to all the numbing mechanisms, right?
Or the distraction, or the explain it away, or numbing, let's just ignore it, or let's just deny that I'm feeling it. Well, let me blame it on the foreigners.
Yeah, or let me have another,
or the neighbors, or the government,
drink, right?
Or different skin colors, whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's actually our disconnection from ourselves, and we can't blame ourselves for it either, because it's a natural process. It's something that happens to everybody. And then so if we can sit in that and not judge it and just be with it, then it is calling us to go just a titch deeper. And then it goes away. And then we're filled with love and filled with peace and filled with joy and filled with fulfillment and filled with
safety. We're filled with safety at that point too. Yeah,
totally safe. 100% safe in that place.
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of where I came from, looking for safety.
Exactly.
100% safe.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing this practice of this stillness practice for like over 50 years now. I'm 81 now.
Okay. Right? So is this a daily practice for you of doing the stillness, or?
I do it daily. I sometimes joke with people. I say, well, you know, when I wake up in the morning, I want to check in to see if I'm still there, because if I'm not there anymore, there's no point getting up. But seriously, what I do is I want to start my day. You know, your mind wanders when you're sleeping. You have dreams and stuff.
Sure.
This morning I was in bed. I thought I heard the phone ring, and then I came upstairs and I wasn't sure if the phone had rung or if I had dreamt that the phone had rung.
Right.
And there was no message, so I think I probably dreamt that the phone rang. Right. So your mind wanders while you're asleep. So I like to get up. I like to get present in the space my body occupies, as fully present as I can, and feel that peace and feel that love and feel that inspiration, and then 100%. Get out of bed and then drag that into the world, because that's how we rebuild the world, because there's a lot that we're screwed up because we haven't done our homework.
I think
we need to do the homework in order to change it, to fill it, to make it better.
That's right. I think you're absolutely right. And if you're listening to this, I think there's just something, I know in my own meditation practice, I do it first thing in the morning when I first get up. Yeah. When I'm still, kind of, I wouldn't say groggy, but I'm not fully awake. I sort of start to rest into it, sit into the meditation space at that point in time.
I do it lying down, because I want all the pressure off my body, because I want to get into the energy. Out of the body into the energy.
Yep, I do it one of two ways: either lying down or sitting up in a comfortable chair. But I think the idea of doing this first thing in the morning before everything gets going is great, because what it does is it puts you into an energetic space that you start to redefine the day. And and one of the insights that I've had recently around this is that, when you wake up in that energy, you wake up into this really loving space, right? This very loving space and connected space. You feel very connected to everything and everyone, and a great deal of love.
Yep.
I recently had an insight, however, that I wasn't feeling support. And what I mean by that is that I was still had a construct in my head that the world was on some level antagonistic to me and that it wasn't there to sort of support me. But then I realized that's just a fabrication because
total fabrication.
Total fabrication.
Where'd you come up with that crap?
Yeah, well, exactly. The place we all came up with it, right?
Of course.
Living in reaction to things that have happened.
Of course.
And so just switching that into no. This is love and support. In fact, this energetic is both.
In fact, love is the support.
That's right.
And love is the support for every human being, and within every human being is that love. Right. And sometimes you catch a little bit of it, and you feel supported from the outside, as well as having the support on the inside. And
then other forms of support can be actually expressions of love too. It's kind of circular, right? In that sense. Yeah. So, but I've just been carrying that with me. That every meeting that I go into, I'm walking into a fabric of love and support. There is no antagonism anymore. Yeah. There is no other agenda than that. And since we create reality based on the energy we bring into the situation, it's just fascinating to see how things unfold with that. So my point is that when you start your day first thing in the morning in this energetic space, you will redefine your life. You will redefine your life. Yeah. You will redefine your health.
Yeah.
And you will actually redefine your longevity, not to mention your satisfaction, relational satisfaction, business satisfaction, whatever else, right?
Yeah.
So
unconditional love is actually perfect health.
That's right.
Life energy is perfect health.
Yeah.
And when healing happens, it's life energy that makes the, whatever manipulations we apply for healing.
That's right.
Life energy puts them into the structure.
Yeah. And so removing the obstructions to that, right, which is kind of the process that you went through, which was removing the obstructions to being able to experience and live in and out of that life energy, right?
Yeah. And most of those obstructions are mental stuff.
Oh, it's all mental. Psychological, mental. Some of it's imprinted. Yeah. I don't feel safe, right? But the other interesting thing, just like in my case with the support, we have blind spots too. So if you're on this journey, realize that there's things that you've so normalized about the world that you don't even see them for what they are, right? That they're just
until you see them.
Until you see them.
Yeah. That's right. And then the insight comes, and then you're done with it.
That's right. Exactly.
It's like it's a really good process. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about support or how we see the world.
Yeah.
If peace is actually everywhere, has always been everywhere, peace, perfect peace, all-encompassing peace, everywhere. It's the foundation of my existence. It's the foundation of the existence of everything in the universe. So if I'm feeling peace, then I see that peace in the world. It's like, oh my God, how cool is that? And I live into the world as though it was peaceful.
Exactly.
When I'm angry, I see enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there are no enemies, I will create enemies. Because the anger needs enemies. So I'm creating them. So then I live into this world of complete peace as though it had enemies in it.
Right.
And if I'm fearful, if my state is peace, is anger, is fear, when I'm fearful, then I see danger.
That's right.
Where when I'm in peace, I see peace. And then I'm going to duck and hide and trying to protect myself and try and figure out how I can get away from whatever dangers. So I'm making that up in my head.
That's
and then living into it.
That's right.
And it's like, it's like crazy. It's crazy. I will create danger out of fear.
I completely agree with you. I think you've articulated that really, really nicely. One of the biggest hurdles for people to get over in this process is the idea that their thoughts are real, right?
Oh, yeah.
We tend to think that how we're thinking is real.
Yeah.
Like, of course it's this way. I see it this way. This is how I think about it. It's real. One of the first steps you have to make is to understand that your thoughts and what you think is real is really just a fabrication.
Yeah. It's all made up.
It's all made up.
It's all made up.
It's all
That's
made
why they
up,
say make
right?
up your mind, right? Yeah,
Well,
we all
yeah.
just make it up.
Yeah,
Or
create your own reality.
Or you
right?
say nothing you think is true. Nothing
That's
you
right.
think is true because it's just
Yeah.
made up stuff. It's symbolic, right? Or
That's
I have
right.
a friend who says there's nothing wrong with beliefs as long as you don't believe them.
That's right.
It's like, oh yeah, I nailed it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's
because
right.
you want to be present in experience.
You want to be connected in experience.
Present in reality, and
That's
reality is experience.
That's right.
And you don't need any thoughts, and you can be alive without thoughts.
Right.
But you can't be thinking without life. So life is
That's
actually more important than thinking.
That's right.
Right?
So if you're listening to this and this either sounds wacko to you, or it sounds like, I've been thinking that some stuff is always going to be this way. This is who I am. This is how it goes. This is what it is, blah, blah, blah. The first thing to understand is that all that is a fabrication, and all of that is completely modifiable. You just have to be able to, set up the stages to walk through it and ultimately transcend it.
Sit with your heartache, and then beyond the heartache, find the master within you. You are perfectly cared for 24/7, 365, lifelong.
That's it.
I mean, amazing, right?
Yeah,
and you can
everything
here,
that shows up.
I can sit here and I can have doomsday problems about the end of the world, and that molecule of folic acid that one cell on my left ankle needs, life has taken it there while I'm having my, while I'm having my fabricated, fear-based doomsday scenarios, right?
That's right.
So life is taking perfect care of me. Even if I'm really stupid in my head, even if I do stupid things, life takes care of it. And
so, we think that we have to do certain things to feel safe, but actually, safety is just something that you claim. It's not an event.
Yeah, it's a state of being.
It's a state of being. It's not something you're going to attain. Like if we have this fabricated construct that if I only make this much money, or if we only get that house, or if I only get this degree, then it's going to be safe.
Well, yeah,
and it never is.
That's the creation out of fear.
That's right.
Right? I'm afraid that then you can live without money. Every creature on the planet except human beings does. You can live without money, but money means nothing without life.
That's right.
It always comes back to that.
In fact, another insight I've had is that, it's affirmation for myself, is that I wake up 27 every day. The audience knows this. I wake up 27 every day. I was born in 54. I wake up 27.
Right.
Right. And I have unlimited resources. I have access to unlimited resources.
Right.
And what I've discovered is that actually money is the least useful resource. And yet it's interesting that people focus so much on the acquisition of money. And then we call a resource, we start to call it an asset, right? And we have asset managers. In actual fact, this is another quantum jump. All of us on this planet, in this fabric that we just talked about of unconditional love, acceptance, non-judgment, support, and safety, we have access to unlimited resources, right?
Yep.
And to take that and break it down and say, well, I'm going to focus on dollars and cents and what's in an account here or there is really, it's so destructive to and it's also so limiting, because it's like, well, I couldn't do that because I don't have enough money. The answer is you can do absolutely anything you want to do. You have access to unlimited resources. Mm-hmm. You just need to be able to access them.
Yeah. And inspired purpose is never about money.
That's right. Never.
It's about
impact.
It's about increasing light.
That's right.
It's about sharing light. It's about sharing lightness. Sharing enlightenment.
And resources flow to that, right?
Helping people have less pain and more joy.
That's right.
It's always about that. Like the hero comes home with the gift of love.
That's right.
It's always a gift of love.
Yeah.
And then the hero doesn't come home to to rob the bank.
No,
Here
that's
it
right.
comes off. Because what happened to me is when I started feeling cared for, because I got in touch with what cares for me,
Yeah.
my whole orientation changed. Before that, it was always like, my anxiety stuff, right?
Yeah.
What can I do that'll get me taken care of? Because I didn't feel taken care of. When I
Right.
started feeling cared for, because I started going to where the care lives, completely changed. I said, oh my God, it's not about me anymore.
That's right.
I'm cared for. And if I don't feel cared for, I know what to do to feel cared for, because it's there.
Mhm.
It's always there.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, if I feel cared for and it's not about me anymore, then what is there left? How can I help?
Yeah. You start resonating with that bigger sense of purpose.
Yeah. And then it's like, what needs to be done? How can I make the biggest splash for good in the time that I have?
Yeah.
Completely changed it. And then all of the stuff that I've done in business, in like with the oils and enzymes and probiotics, never did it for money. It just was something that I felt needed to be done. I was actually broke for 15 years. I moved in with my mother when I started the oils, when I developed the industry of making oils with health in mind. Right. And
that will be another podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely will be another podcast. Yeah.
Right.
So, it can't be about money. It isn't about money. Life is not about money. Life is about life. How do the gift, if you talk about purpose, the first gift is to do homework. First gift is to be fully present in all of my being and my surroundings and not stuck in my head. That's the first gift. And why is that the first gift? Why is that the most important purpose? Because I was given this gift. You were given that gift. Everybody listening, everybody watching, you were given that gift. And if you don't unpack it and enjoy the magnificence of that gift that you were given, it's a wasted gift because nobody else can enjoy it for you. So that's purpose one. Purpose two is help where you can. But you can't even get in touch with the talent you have for helping if you're not present in your own space.
That's right.
So you have to put that first. That's contrary to what many people tell you when they want you to help them get to their goals.
That's right.
But your goal, according to life, purpose one is be there. Because for 4 billion years you didn't exist. Or for I don't know how long before that. So you'd never existed. Now you get 100 years, 120, 150 if we do everything you say, right? And after that, you're not going to exist for another 4 billion years. So this is the deal. This is the holiday. This is the party. This is the thing. Make the most of it. How do you make the most of it? Be fully present in it. Doesn't mean do everything that could be done in the world. Be fully present in it.
Oh, and you'll find that that's actually quite effortless to do when you're unencumbered, when you're not living in reaction to things, right? Because when you're living in reaction to things, there's all this sense of urgency, fear. It's driven by this, that, and the other thing. But when you're safe, sound, secure in this loving space, this fabric that exists, then all of a sudden the activities are there. And there's a sense of wanting, a deep desire to do them. So there isn't any lack of motivation, but it's not the same sense of scarcity and urgency that's driving the action.
Yeah, if you can get out of the motivation that lasts for a week and then it goes away, there's a deep current that runs through us.
That's right.
That we float on. That current is more effective than any motivational speech. It's always there. And it's quiet, and it's steady, and it never lets up, and it carries you to your destination if you let it.
And if people are out there and they're listening to this, and it's like, I'm trying to find what my purpose is.
Yeah.
Everything that we're talking about here in this episode here this is how you find your purpose. You really find your purpose once you get into this fabric of life that we're talking about, and you make these quantum leaps, and you have these realizations, and you throw out all the stuff that you thought was real, and you actually create what's actually much more profoundly real. And then from there, your sense of purpose just starts to evolve. and other purposes. You can't. It's not that you can't have purpose from other vantage points, but I find that for me, I've had purposes at various points in my life, but from this vantage point, the purpose has never been pure. It's never been more sustainable. It's never been more resonant and integrated with who I am and what it is I want to do. It's like a really profound sense of purpose.
So if the primary purpose is to be fully present, and you become fully present, your purpose in the world, how you can help, will show up. And that could be different every day. I talked to a guy today. I was walking without my shirt. And I have this joke. I talk to strangers quite a bit. Yeah. And he sort of did something because I was walking without a shirt. I'm an old guy. I'm in pretty good shape. I have a nice tan. Look okay, right? But so sometimes I say to people when they don't have a shirt on, I say, "Hey, I love the shirt your mother made you." Right?
Nice.
Or the shirt life induced your mother to make for you. And so I tell them about my shirt. I said, I've been wearing this shirt for 81 years. It's always form-fitting. The button never comes off. It doesn't need a zipper. It's drip dry. It doesn't need to be ironed. If I sleep in it, I don't wake up wrinkled in the morning, right? And it goes on and on. It's self-repairing, and it changes color with the seasons, so it's always in style. And it makes vitamin D for free, right? Yeah. So we get into that, and it's kind of funny, because people don't think about their skin that way. Right?
That's right.
So I started talking to him, and I stopped and started that conversation. And then we got into the conversation that you and I are having right now, just on the street with the guy. He was so grateful because he had just had something that pulled him out of his peace, pulled him into a trigger, and how do you fix all these things that trigger you? Well, you have to go back to your base, right? And leave the trigger outside. And it's not personal because your wholeness will still be whole if somebody tells you they don't like you. Your wholeness is still whole.
Right. No, that's right.
But if you make your wholeness depend on somebody else's opinion,
that's right.
Then you're not in a really good shape. Then you're not in charge of your own life. And you
have to understand that. Yeah, you have to understand nothing external to you can ever make you feel safe. Ever.
Right. So one day it'll make you feel safe, and the next day it'll cut your legs off.
Exactly. It'll make you feel completely unsafe. Right? Yeah. So, well, Udo, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I know we were going to talk about health-related things, and I know you've done a lot of things with healthy oils and written books and this kind of thing. But this conversation just kind of unfolded. So
let's do another one.
Yeah, I'm delighted we had this one.
Because it deserves its own time, because that's a big story.
Yeah, absolutely.